I am Nick LaRovere, and welcome to the Don't Suck at Video podcast. I'm a filmmaker, video producer, and cinematographer who helps filmmakers tell stories, build a career, and helps businesses grow using video marketing. My guest today is Marcus Pittman. Marcus is the CEO of LOOR TV, which is a new streaming platform which is focused on incubating new filmmaking talent and giving power to the subscribers to fund and watch exclusive stories outside the Hollywood system. I hope that's an accurate description.
Yeah, that was great. That was a great one.
All right. So my first question is, what is one of your favorite movies or shows of all time?
Oh man, I'm a really big fan of like the pre-Disney Pixar era.
Okay.
So Monsters Inc. is one of my favorites.
That's a classic.
As far as television, I'm gonna really do a shock to the system here, but I think my favorite TV show of all time is Big Brother, the reality TV show.
Okay, I don't actually know that, to be honest.
Okay, yeah, it's a scripted reality series, and they take like 16 people and they put them in a house for like all summer, and they record 24/7 and but I just feel like the way they produce that and the storytelling, and like it's hard to get a story from people just hanging out all day.
Yeah.
And so I think like the way they edit everything and compile it into this competition series, that for the most part is pretty. It's not. If you look at like the foreign versions of it, it's all like risque stuff. But the American version is very much just like Survivor,
wholesome.
where it's just it's kind of I wouldn't say it's wholesome. It's insanely competitive, and there's villains. Like it's one of the last reality shows I feel like there's actual villains.
Interesting.
I don't know if you saw like Mark Burnett saying he doesn't want a villain in Survivor anymore, and people are like, "What are you talking about?" Like that's
you gotta have a villain to root against. You gotta have somebody that everybody loves to hate.
That's what people were saying. Is like, does he not understand storytelling? You have to have antagonists and protagonists.
Yeah, everybody gets along. It's great here. Okay. What is the story there?
Yeah. It's like the shift like with American Idol, where they're like, hey, we're just not going to be mean to anybody now. And you're like, well, this is a different show. It's a good show. I think the new version
Simon
of American
Cowell,
Idol is
that was like...
Yeah,
it's a completely let's see how he's going to roast this guy.
Yeah, and even Simon Cowell isn't mean anymore. He says, well, I have kids now. So it's like, well, you need to teach them to tell the truth, man. That's what you were doing in American Idol way back in the day. But yeah, so everything's kind of just got soft. And I feel like Big Brother's like, well, I'm a big reality TV fan. So,
okay, I think
the best scripted TV series of all time, I think without question, is Breaking Bad. Maybe Better Call Saul, kind of, but I think like one of the things, like
it is very good, but not quite.
Yeah, well, even if you were to say Better Call Saul is better than Breaking Bad, the problem is that I think Better Call Saul made Breaking Bad better. So
yeah, together
it was one of the rare instances.
Would not.
Yeah. So it was like one of those rare instances where the prequel actually added value to the thing that came before it. And so, it's just, I think like you probably have to just use that as like one piece.
A phenomenal show. The other thing is actually that I haven't really heard talked about much, but I did watch an analysis on Breaking Bad cinematography, and it has great cinematography, but you wouldn't think of that because it just kind of blends into the background in the best possible way. Like it just helps tell the story and you don't notice, but they are very deliberate. It's not just like, oh yeah, we shoot this way and then we shoot this way. It's done with a lot of intention, but just blends in. So, so LOOR, what is LOOR exactly? Like I don't know about how you guys came to create this thing. And
so I built a YouTube studio, helped build a YouTube studio called Apologia Studios. And we built that up to about 200.
Know that. Okay.
Oh yeah.
I know them.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, I came there pretty early on, I think Jeff was doing the podcast out of a radio station, and
Okay.
I made this movie called Babies Are Murdered Here, and that kind of got Apologia Church doing abortion clinic ministry, and Jeff asked me to speak at his conference and whatnot. And so I spoke at the conference, and they were doing the podcast out of a radio station. So we go to the radio station. I was like, Jeff, how much does it cost to run out a radio station? Just completely casual about it. And he was like, oh, about $3,000. And I was like, dude, you can pay
Oh,
me $3,000. You can pay me
yeah.
$3,000 a month. And I'll not only with that, I'll like film the video of the podcast and we'll put it up. And so, yeah, thankfully we were able to raise the funds. I think within like 3 weeks, I moved out to
Nice.
Phoenix and we built a set and we took an old abandoned warehouse that we got relatively cheap rent from and just turned that into the whole studio space. And yeah, so I did that until
I
I
had
got
no
married.
idea.
And
That's cool.
yeah, so got married. Was looking for a part-time gig on the side. Um, Applied for this video editing job that I was going to convince them I could do night and weekends,
Okay.
for a marketing agency. And then they brought me in for an interview and they were like, look, we know you can do this job at home, fully remote, nights and weekends. And it's
Yeah.
not they were like, we know it's not a full-time job for you. But let me explain what we do. And they were like, we're the ad agency that does all of PureFlix's marketing. And
Okay.
we need a Christian.
Oh, okay.
Because most of our employees don't understand evangelical culture. The owner of the agency, the boss, she did, which is why she knew. She's like, yeah, I just um,
Hmm.
hired a bunch of feminists who work for me, and so now I need somebody. So yeah,
Interesting.
I got to sort of be in the I guess you could say the dungeon of where things happen for Christian
Yeah.
movies, especially the first Christian streaming platform. And would spend over $1 million a month advertising on Facebook, just
Wow.
the worst movies you could imagine. And it became very clear to me that they were a data company and they really didn't really care about the art that much. That wasn't their primary focus.
Interesting.
And so, um,
When you
at
say
least
they
at least that was my impression of
when you say they're a
what
data
they were.
company, you mean that they're basically selling the numbers like, hey, here's how many people
No,
are
I mean it that I mean it in the sense of they know who they're targeting
okay,
and the
right.
kind of content that that audience wants. And so there's no need to change that up, even if, as my opinion would be, that that sort of content is an embarrassment and blight on Christianity.
Hmm.
So basically, if we spend this much money advertising to this people group, these kind of movies,
Yeah,
then we'll break even.
right.
And really, what they wanted to do, I think, as time went on, you can see like they sold to Sony. They just did an exit to
Okay.
Sony, and then Sony bought them. And now Great American bought it back from Sony, I believe. But so so just
Yeah,
this whole
so it's
thing, but
not
basically like
any focus on actually
yeah, no
integrity
discussion
in
on
the art
storytelling.
form, so to speak, because
Yeah, I
there's
think one
a
time I was
crossover
told,
between art and business.
yeah,
It doesn't have to be all business. Like, oh, we don't care. Like, this is a lot like the indie horror movie scene, where like I've worked with distributors where they're like, no, this is what we do. We do $30,000 movies. They have to feature some sort of creature. They have to have this. They have to have that. And
yeah,
they just pump them out, and it's like it's just
yeah.
garbage. It's not.
So the Christian movie industry has that same category, and it has to have a dog, has to have a horse, has to have a little girl, and there has to be some sort of serious traumatic emotional event. So whether that's cancer or breakup or relationships, it's all the enemies
It's painful.
all the enemies in Christian movies are inward emotional personal conflict sort of stuff,
Oh,
as opposed to like let's say I mean I think
seems
that's
kind of
most
weak.
feminine movies in general, so not just Christian movies, that's just Hallmark, right? So it's just the danger is a relationship that goes bad, like that's the
Gotcha.
danger. compare that
It's not
to
particularly
science fiction.
compelling,
Yeah,
in my
science
opinion.
fiction, the danger is the death, the destruction of the entire world, your
Yeah,
family and children actually dying. And so like you see that
the
comparison.
stakes are a little
Um,
different. Yeah.
the mistakes,
Well, even in like a
the
rom
stakes
com
are
or
a lot higher.
something,
Yeah.
it's like the danger could be like breaking up a family or something. Like it's not just an internal conflict. There's anyway, yeah. So with
Yeah.
all of this being said, lore, it came out of you kind of being tired of that whole thing, right? Or maybe
Yeah,
seeing like
so
a
I
different
saw it from
path.
I saw it from like a very deep marketing standpoint, that the movies are marketed to very specific audiences. And so it's like my question was always, why is nobody targeting men in the faith-based Christian genre, or more broadly, even in the broadly conservative genre, right? Like if you look at
Uh,
like Daily Wire, their first four movies all had female action hero leads. And then if you look at
Interesting.
uh, right, Run Hide Fight
Yeah, I
had
never thought about that.
then they brought over Gina from Disney, and she did like a
Right.
western, and she was like the female action hero star. And then I think they
Yeah.
did a superhero sort of thing where there was like females. And then I don't even remember
I
the
don't
rest.
remember after the Gina thing. I
But
don't
and then they
know.
went from that, right? Then they went from that, because what they were doing was they were copying the market data. It's like, oh, conservative movies, faith-based movies, they appeal to women. So that's what we have to do. We have to make our adult version of conservative movies, but also make sure women are appealed to. And so, which is
Well,
really interesting because like Shapiro, like he's adamantly against women in the draft, but all his female action heroes in his movies
yeah.
could easily enlist no problem. So it was just really weird. I was like, oh, that's weird. But then they went and they got a lot of flack for that. I think they saw that's not a move. But so then they went and did this whole shift to focus on Bent Key, which is all children's
Right.
programming,
Children's
still
content.
marketed towards women. So not even they were able to do it. The Chosen, if you read, I
I
don't remember
mean,
the name of the book or who wrote it, but if The Chosen, they talk about how they specifically developed The Chosen for 35-year-old women and above.
really,
And
I didn't
and
know that.
this was all because Lifeway Christian bookstores were the prominent distribution point for all Christian entertainment and media, right? So all your
Okay.
music, all your movies, all your books, they all got sold there. So you'd have K-Love selling music at Lifeway, and then you have the
Okay.
Christian movie industry selling DVDs at Lifeway. But those DVDs are gone now. I mean, the bookstores are gone now.
So you
And
think
the
that they're
DVDs are
stuck
kind of gone
in
too. But
how things used to be, which is, hey, people are buying from this place. This is their customer base. Therefore, this is the kind of film that needs to, this is who we're targeting.
right,
But
yeah.
now
So it's
it's
smart business
whoever you want
move.
to target, really, because now
Right, because
it's
see what
open
happened was
distribution.
what yeah, what happened was is they shut down all the Lifeway Christian bookstores without thinking about how to move into new markets. So they didn't have a way to do
Okay.
that. And like my personal theory is that's why like the last 3 Christian movies I think have been about some sort of Christian musician, right? Whether it's like a Hillsong movie or
Hmm.
Jesus Revolution or something like that, because they still have K-Love radio stations that they can use. So I
Oh
think
man.
like, but they don't. There is no male masculine way to distribute content, and so that was like the thing that was like keeping me awake at night. And then
Hmm.
I went and made another pro-life movie called Babies Are Still Murdered Here for Apologia after I left the agency. um, I just wanted to make a movie. I was like, I need to just make
Okay.
a movie after being in that world. And so I made a documentary, spent a whole year on it. We put it up on Amazon Prime, and then Amazon Prime deleted it for what I thought was because it was pro-life. But I don't think that was the case. I think they got rid of all their independent films on Prime, and they deleted all
Yeah,
of
I
them.
heard
But I
something
didn't know that at the
about
time.
them no longer taking independent. They
Yeah,
started off more friendly to indie films, and then just got worse and
yeah,
worse.
and then they shifted away from that, and I was like, well, okay, we got to fix that problem, because that's how the internet works. And so that's how I came up with lore is like, what happens if like Kickstarter or Netflix had a baby where you could spend your monthly subscription or spend more money funding movies and TV shows that you want to see, and then all the subscribers get to watch the movie when it's out. Um,
Yeah.
like the fact that that didn't exist was kind of like I was like, why doesn't this exist? And so I came up with the idea on Memorial Day weekend, I think, and went to my friend's house. Just so happened to be in Texas, so we drove up and spent a day or two with a guy by the name of John Speed, and he was like, "Yeah, this is a great idea. Let me talk to this other guy who happened to be Maseo." And he came on board as our first CEO and was really instrumental in basically structuring us as a company that we could
Okay.
go and seek investment and stuff like that. This stuff I had no idea how to do at the time. Um, and so we did that, and then eventually got to Jason Farley, who's our chief content officer. I met him in
Yep.
August of that year.
Jason's
What
awesome.
long, yeah, long before we got our first investor. And basically spent the whole year of 2020 talking about, how would this work? What would it look like? We got Nathaniel Talbot, who's our CTO, a brilliant developer, who exited a company and has built a startup technology company before to work with the developers, and
Oh
he
yeah.
created the whole loot economy system and the conversion ratios and developed the website and just brilliant. I couldn't have done it.
Yeah.
I don't think
Well,
could
that's
have
the other
done
thing
any
is
of.
you have to have the tech and the tool to implement the idea. So that's
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah, and I think first and foremost we are a technology company because we're not actually creating content as a company. We've just created a marketplace to connect rule breaking filmmakers with consumers who want the rules broken.
Hmm.
And so that's really like what we've built is just that sort of gathering point and the
Yeah.
technology to make
Well,
that happen.
because the idea, I mean, if you have an Amazon Studios or Netflix or whatever, it's all their decisions on content are 100% top down, and it's just whatever they say goes. Versus,
Yeah, or
yeah,
even
like you
worse,
guys
it's
are
based on the algorithm, right? A lot of
right,
their
which
decisions are based off.
may get some stuff right and some stuff wrong, and like it just depends
Yeah, it
on.
usually doesn't, especially when the algorithm is got a bunch of, uh, the algorithms are never neutral, so they all side
Yeah,
with
who programs the
certain.
algorithm? What
Yeah, right. So
criteria is it using?
right. But you remember like Netflix used to be very, very democratized in the
It was
sense
very
they had the
indie
rating
friendly as
system.
well. You could go
What?
watch a lot of. It was very indie friendly as well. You could watch a lot of
Yeah.
indie films on there, and not anymore.
Yeah, indie friendly and then very much democratized in the sense that the rating system of the users was very essential to what got made or what was part of that sort of at least especially when they were a rental company.
You used to be able to give them
They
stars to rate.
Yeah,
I
we
forgot
did
about
it
that
well until
completely.
until Amy Schumer screwed that up for everybody. Uh, because you know the story about that. Her story got
No,
her comedy special got the lowest rank, like it was like 1 star review on Netflix, and so they just pulled
none
the
of our
whole
shows can
rating
be one
system.
star. It's can't show that. Uh,
Yeah, so they pulled that whole rating system because of Amy Schumer. But yeah, that's the thing. It's like, well, you're not listening to your consumers at that point, and you're basically protecting a class of people, which would be the artists. You're treating them
well,
as this special protected class,
yeah. Well,
as
it's
if
not
the
based on
consumers.
merit. Like the audience, it
Right.
doesn't
It's
matter.
not
We know
based
that
on
you all
merit.
hated this, and you obviously told us that you hate it. But we don't. We want it out there because we like her. So it doesn't
Yeah. Right.
matter. It doesn't matter what you want or what you say.
Right. Which well, there's a way to protect your artists, but also protect your consumers at the same time. And so that's the sort of thing that's like, I don't think Hollywood grasp or understands the importance of like what the people think. Because if they did, they would realize
There's a
that
lot of stuff that
all
wouldn't
the
get made.
nonsense, yeah, all this nonsense stuff they're making is absolute trash now. Nobody likes it. Nobody has any hope for Hollywood at this point. And you would think,
Yeah.
oh, this is an easy problem to fix. You do it with low budget independent movies to build out new IP consistently over time. But they are in this little idea that they need every movie to be a Marvel blockbuster.
Right.
And
Well, I
so,
hate that. I
so
hate that because I've
yeah,
seen the trend. It's like every movie has to be a tentpole 30 or $300 million movie. There used to be
yeah,
far more lower budget. I mean, low budget still was $10 million, but that's 30 $10 million movies, and they just aren't
yeah,
doing that. And it's like everything doesn't have,
yeah,
like you said, everything doesn't have to be a Marvel movie, and it shouldn't be.
right. And so I think, I mean, you can't build cultural IP, you can't build like a cultural movement by just focusing on high budget projects. Like even Marvel movies,
Yeah.
it took 100 years of comic books to really build out
There's a
a
lot.
Marvel
Yeah.
movie. So
The
you
other,
know, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was sold as photocopied, hand-drawn comic books out of the back of someone's car in New York, right?
yeah.
So all of these things started super low budget, and then we're getting the high-end, multi-million dollar Hollywood version of these things that were basically just sketchbook drawings at one point. And I think we forget that, like, oh yeah, that's how you build it, you know, and figuring out how can we build out IP that is around for 100 years, like
Hmm.
Marvel or even DC.
And you got to start
Like how do we
somewhere.
build?
Yeah.
Yeah, how do we build that out? And that's a lot of people, especially in the investment community, don't really have the stomach for that because they want that quick exit, right?
Mm.
And that's just not how changing culture
Doesn't
works.
takes a long time.
It's a long game. It's a long game, and it's something that you invest in so that your great grandchildren are wealthy. But we've gotten so used to just investment in the sense of we need a quick exit so I can retire on a cruise ship,
Mm.
that we just sell all of our properties to the highest bidder, and then we're left with nothing.
Mm. Interesting. Yeah. So I guess what's your the priority? Is it making a change, or is it just making money?
No, it's
Uh,
both.
I mean, you can do
It's
both,
both. If
but
if you make if you make a change, you'll make more money.
okay.
So
Well,
that like
yeah,
that's the
because
key.
there's an
Like,
audience. There's a group of people who aren't being served, who could be. There's an open market, basically, is what you're saying.
well, no, no. Think of it's way more simplistic than that. It's I can make a movie. Let's say I can make a cheesy Christian movie for $5 million, and I could probably get about 30 to 50 in the box office. 50 if I'm lucky, right? So 50 million
Okay.
in the box office. Maybe I'll have a smash hit like Sound of Freedom, and I'll get 100 million, right? And then the movie goes away, and nobody cares about it anymore, and there's nothing left, right?
Okay.
Or I can make a hit independent cartoon, let's say like Rick and Morty, which came from,
That'll have way more
Channel
staying
101.
power than Sound of
Channel
Freedom.
101, way more staying power.
Yeah.
I think Cartoon Network did 100 episode order, which is unheard of. But
Wow.
also, like, you have people
That
wearing
is
the
wild.
merchandise. There's
Oh yeah, super
there's
popular.
yeah, insane, right? So you're changing how people perceive what cartoons can be. And actually I would say the intelligence and depth of writing in cartoons with a show like Rick and Morty. But also you have people going in high school everywhere wearing Rick and Morty t-shirts because that's a cool thing to do. So you're making
And you have
money on the
merchandise.
cultural shift. Yeah, you're making money on the cultural shift and transformation. and you're making money on the IP or the ads, I guess, because it's TV, not movie, but you're making money on the
Sure.
IP. So you're getting actually double. But again, like the time it takes for Rick and Morty to become a cultural institution is probably about 5 seasons, right? So
I think
it
it
takes a
hit
lot
pretty hard
longer.
at first, but also, like you were saying about
But
the Ninja
it hit
Turtles.
pretty hard at first. It hit pretty hard at first, but remember it started as a Channel 101 terrible sketch
Right.
animation
It
that
was
went up on a
another.
website before YouTube did.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So no, you're absolutely right. Like it hit really hard, but there was also a lot of time to think about this idea, and there was a
Yeah.
lot. Like it was a
There's a lot of
patient
development
game.
before it became the final version of what it was.
Yeah.
And I've seen
As
some of that
opposed to
that you're talking
yeah,
about, the
as
old
opposed to
cartoon.
here's our audience, here's the kind of stuff we want. Let's make a quick movie, make a quick buck, and then nobody. There's no Sound of Freedom merch.
Hmm.
Right? Like what?
No.
Like there's no cultural transformation with that. There, you don't. I don't see. I don't see anything on Bent Key, Daily Wire, for example. I don't see any kids wearing Bent Key merch about the chinchillas, or whatever other kids shows they have on it. Right? I
Yeah.
don't see. I see a lot of kids wearing Bluey product though. Um, and stuff like that. So there's like just this time and effort that's put in to developing IP and culture together, and that maximizes your revenue. Although it's not a quick,
Do you
let's
think,
just spend money because we have it and make something as fast as possible sort of thing.
yeah, why do you think that extra time leads to that result? Like, is it because there's a lot more depth because it was developed over time? So it's a more rich as opposed to something quick, or like, why do you
Yeah,
think that is?
I mean, the simplest answer, if you look at Marvel or Star Wars,
Yeah.
those have several generations of fans behind it, right? So I went to go see a Star Wars movie. I don't remember which one. I think it might have been Force Awakens. It
Okay.
might have been that one when it first came back. Uh, I went to go see that with me, my dad, and my grandpa at the
Nice.
same time. Right?
That's
Like
fun.
that is 3 generations of Star Wars fans together. Like that is
Hmm.
multiple amounts of revenue over and over and over again. And those are the things again, like that happened because Lucas had complete creative freedom. He could make what he wanted. And the studios weren't really interested uh, in the movie. They didn't think it was
I
going to
think
do
it
that well.
almost didn't get made, I think, if I
Yeah, it almost
remember
didn't get made.
correctly.
He had to self-fund a lot of it. Basically said, "I'll take the merchandise rights in exchange for a distribution deal." And they were like, "Well, we don't want merchandise rights. That's not worth anything." Right?
Yeah,
That's what
this,
happened.
yeah,
So you can't get merchandise
clever
rights
guy.
anywhere now
Yeah.
except for LOOR, right? So we give all our artists their merchandise rights because we want our artists to be able to make as much money as possible. That's the ultimate goal. So
I think that answers what my next question was. So I guess if you're speaking to filmmakers who are looking for a path, which I think a lot are, like just like I was, you're looking for some kind of route to just be able to make films. Like, um, what should they do if they're interested in working with lore?
yeah, so we have a very easy process to be selected to work with LOOR, and it's one is the first and foremost question we ask is, can you actually make something? If our
Important.
subscribers, yeah, if our subscribers fund your project and we write you a check to make it, is it going to be delivered? Like that's the main thing. Because a lot of people, come to us with a script, but they don't know how to work a movie camera, so that's not helpful.
Yeah. You have
Um,
to be able to show that
um,
you've done something before. Like you can
right?
deliver.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it could be YouTube videos, or it could be. I mean, I've seen. I barely biblical was uh, a sketch on a napkin. that was presented to us. So it doesn't have to be like this very
Awesome.
complicated. Yeah, it was. He's like, hey, everybody told me not to pitch this to anyone but you guys because everybody else would say no. And he just said, so I just drew it on a napkin real quick, and it's teddy bears reenacting the most violent Old Testament Bible stories. And we were in. Like, that's all that was. And I mean, he had the background working with Nickelodeon and Disney, so that, like he had proof that he's made stuff before.
Right.
But the idea is what sold us. I think we probably would have even taken a chance on him just based off the idea, even if he's never really done anything but YouTube videos before. I think because the idea was so strong, and you could tell that he really wanted to make this, and everybody was telling him no. So it was worth a shot for us, and so we did that. That was by far our most popular. Is still our most popular show. And then, yeah, I mean, like your work is incredible.
Yeah. Thanks.
Esotera is probably some of the best independent science fiction I've seen. And
Thanks.
it really is, man. Like the stuff you do, the Foley work, the model making, the fact that you guys are actual legitimate makers, is really, really fantastic.
I have a team to thank for that for sure.
Yeah, of course you do.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course you do.
Just want to be very clear. No, I mean I like to
Yeah,
tinker
yeah.
a little bit, but there's just people who are so much better at that than me. So I'm just glad that I was able to find the right people because it was like a non-starter without the right people. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, right. It was the
Um,
same with lore, right? Like
yeah.
I couldn't have gotten this far on my own, and we had an amazing team, and people still tell us that we shouldn't have got this far, even with our
Well,
amazing
here
team.
you are.
So, but here we are.
Um,
Yeah. So,
so I know that you guys have a page on the website, LOOR.tv. So there's a pitch page there. So if a filmmaker has a cool idea or something that they have been working on, they can go there and they can send
yeah, if you
that
go to the
into you.
very bottom, of LOOR TV, if you're not logged in, there's a creator tab, and you can
Okay.
go to the creator tab and really just submit some of the work you've done, and what you're capable of, and then Jason Farley, our chief content officer, routinely looks into that to see if there's anything that is that catches his attention. So,
Yeah. Well, so the
and then
funny
from
thing is,
there,
oh, go ahead.
oh yeah, well, I just want to say, and then from there, then you pitch to our audience. Once we verify that you actually make something and we trust you with our audience,
Mhm.
then you can subscribe. Then our subscribers can spend their monthly subscription funding movies and TV shows that they want to see. So that's where the democracy of it comes in.
Yeah.
Because we could be really wrong about whether or not artists. We could be like, oh, we really like that, and then nobody really wants to pay for it.
Right.
So we see that with a lot of children's programming. Nobody really wants to pay for children's programming. They just want it there as background
Interesting.
noise to entertain their kids, right? But they're not willing to cough up their own money for it. And so like
That's
just sort of seeing
interesting.
stuff like that and whatnot has been really amazing. All the data and stuff you get, and you just realize how backwards everybody is. I think I made a comment. Somebody was talking about how 15% of all watch time is children's programming on streaming networks or something. And like my comment was like, yeah,
15.
but it's like CNN at the airport. Nobody watches it. It's
Yeah.
just always on,
It's not the
right?
same as a film where you're like, oh, I'm sitting, we're watching this movie. It's not the
Yeah.
same.
For me, that's a sign of a good show. If like I put my phone down and forget about my phone, like that to me is like really, really like
Yeah.
a key thing now. And so that's hard to do. But I but those things are coming. It's pretty great to see that.
So I was gonna say the funny thing is that I can't remember how I found lore at all, but I just remember I stumbled upon the website somehow, and I was like, "Oh, this is cool! Like I appreciate the intention behind this." Oh, look, they have a pitch page, and I was like, "You know what? They're probably not gonna ever get back to me. Like they probably get a million messages or whatever, but I'll go ahead and I'll try it. You never know, right?" And so I put Esotera in there and I pressed send. And then at some point, Jason reached out to me and the rest is history. So,
Dude,
yeah,
we've been
that
wanting
was.
sci-fi for a long time. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that? Like, so how'd you get started with that?
So, Esotera, I would say, I think it's been like 6 years or something now when I started building the world. I can't remember exactly how I got into it. I just know I'm a fan of all sorts of post-apocalyptic stuff, and sci-fi, but like The Road or the Fallout games, a lot of stuff like that. Mad Max, I'm a fan of all that, and so I just started making. I made a couple of post-apocalyptic short films, and then I just started. I don't remember why it just struck me. Um, I just started building this whole world. So I think that's the interesting thing is that it didn't start off very defined at all. Over time, it has sort of like developed into something more defined. And basically, it's the world, say, 100 years in the future after a massive solar flare, and it just basically wipes out all of our modern trappings or brings us out of them. So communication, power, all this stuff goes away that causes chaos and war and now everyone's just trying to figure out. So you have these elevated solar levels everywhere. So wireless communication no longer works. Then there's something called cathium, which is a mineral that is used for these super powerful batteries in the world and it may or may not have something to do with the increased solar activity that created this new material. So there's kind of elements from different things that I just liked, which so I put them in there. So stuff like AI and stuff like you would see in Fallout with slavers and stuff like that. For me, the fun part of it is being able to explore different ideas and different aspects of the world because you can pretty much do anything that you want. So the difficulty has actually been narrowing the focus down over time. So
Yeah. But it's sort of like each short film is a separate entry point into the world. Is that how you describe
yeah,
it?
yeah. So every short film that we've done so far has been just telling a small story of like a few people in the world in different situations. Like I envision being able to tell a story anywhere on Earth, but set in the world of Esotera with the consequences of how the world played out. But just a difference in culture or location or whatever you could do. I'm doing everything set basically in Arizona because that's where I live and that's practical, and the desert aesthetic works for that. But I think you could potentially even go to space, for example, because there's colonists that got sent before everything happened. They got sent to go colonize another world. So I kind of built it so that if it gets legs and I'm able to continue telling stories in the world, there's somewhere to go with it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
It's a brilliant one. It's a brilliant concept. I think lore is like the perfect place for it because you can't really pitch short films as a way to get to series, right? Like anywhere
no,
else. And then it's just man, it's just so well done. Like the acting's good, the props and practical effects are good. Like it's just really great, man. You really should be proud of it. I usually get all the information as to what the show is about through Jason. He was
hmm
telling me that you wanted it sort of like the Twilight Zone or Black Mirror, but every
yeah,
episode still existed in the same world. Like the
yeah,
world was the same because there's an objective reality like you can't really
yeah.
escape from, and so you're sort of got ground. So I think that's that's really why I like Esotera, because it's just the acting, the practical effects, everything is just really well done for an independent film. You wouldn't even really, honestly, wouldn't even really know it. And so, yeah, great job to your team, and great job to you for
Thank you.
assembling that team. That's hard to do.
It was quite difficult, but yeah, I appreciate my team so much, honestly. And sometimes I feel bad because I feel like I can't properly compensate them for the level of value that they bring. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
it kind of drives me forward, because I really want to be able to do some projects where it's like, hey, I'm going to pay you what you're worth and not ask for any favors. Because I
Yeah,
think
no,
they
I hear you.
deserve to get more work.
That drives us forward at LOOR too, because we see the work that our artists are doing, and like, I mean, like, I don't know if you saw like Florida Lee, like, is one of the animated shows on our
Yeah,
platform. The guy's asking like $200 an episode. We're like, dude, you're
yeah,
crazy. Like, you're crazy. The show is so good. It's one of our most viewed shows. I think the whole series
that's cool.
funded in like 3 or 4 weeks, because it was like $200 an episode. And then once people started watching it, they were like, "Oh, this is actually really decent."
Mhm.
And I was like, "Dude, we got to get you, like, you got to be selling merch. Like, you got to, like, $200 an episode ain't it?" But that's why you have, like, you can't despise the day of small beginnings. And the goal is to see our lore artists get on major networks and major deals. So that's what motivates us to keep
Yeah,
going, because we want to get attention to them on their projects and stuff. So
yeah, that's awesome. I appreciate that
that's why
too.
we're in the middle of raising capital now in our next investment round, purely really to focus on marketing, bringing in more subscribers, and really like be able to like send our artists
Build the
on PR
audience.
circuits and influencers and stuff like that, and have Twitch
Right.
streamers watch Barely Biblical, and like just whatever, like that's what we want to do, is like we really want to expand, and you can only do that at the rate of capital investment. And so right now, like,
Mhm.
that's our main focus, is grow as many subscribers as possible, and then raise capital to really throw gasoline on things, so that we can bless our filmmakers.
Yeah. So I'll just say this. I think I'm really not great at pitching Esoterra, partially because um, it's really difficult to be sort of objective and look at it as a whole world when I'm in the inside of it. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, the way I see it, is that every episode will be like its own standalone story set in the world, and at least for the short films. My goal is always to do feature films and shows, but that they could have touch points between the stories,
yeah,
and it can be an interconnected world, like with consistent rules that whoever is telling the stories, which maybe in the future might not even be me, right? It might be some other director.
yeah,
But that whoever's telling the stories, they have these ground rules to work from that give the world a sense of realism and depth because it's based in something, and you don't just make up whatever you want. So what I when I was first talking to Jason, I had a feature film, most of the script written, but I have a feature film that I wanted to do, but I decided it might make more sense if we're able to do this thing with LOOR to do a show, like a full TV show, because just looking at reality, with every episode of a show, me and my team would improve over time as we iterate, improve our processes, like find better people to work with, like good actors and stuff. The stories are building upon each other, so you're following different characters, but it's all set in a city called Respite in the world of Esotera. And in this city, there's
yeah,
all sorts of different stuff going on, and it builds
yeah.
up to the ending, which I think would be so
Well,
much fun to do.
yeah, dude, I think you're like, the fact that you came with to us with like, hey, here's these 3 short films, but this isn't where it ends. Like,
Yeah,
this is the beginning of this whole new thing, is so brilliant. My only advice to you is keep marketing it and teasing it and telling, like let's get some stuff about episode 2. Let's get people funding episode 2. Like, let's not forget about it. And
I
like
definitely
let's
want to
really
make
start pushing that.
Yeah.
Because the content creators who really do best on our platform are the ones that like really like get into like, building an Esotera fan group on Facebook, that sort of stuff. Like that like really keeps people motivated and spending their loot on your project, as opposed to saying, oh, this project's closer, I'm not going to fund Esotera this week because this one's closer. But no, you build up that loyalty.
Keep the interest going.
Don't be afraid to talk about it, man. Don't be afraid of, people pitching it however they're going to pitch it. Just let the consumers, tell their friends about it however, and
however they will.
Ultimately you make it. Yeah. And so yeah, man, so that'd be my advice, man. Just come in there, like, let's get some teasers of episode 2. Let's start pushing people and saying, hey, this is a real show that you need to take seriously. Because I think we all got good reviews of the first one when that funded and streamed. And I want to build the world of Esotera like at a really full level. And I think your show is super important for the kind of content we want to do at LOOR. So,
well, thanks. Yeah, I'll definitely keep pushing. I plan on making some more behind the scenes content and stuff like that to keep teasing. I definitely have some more that I can share. So, like, I've been talking to we just are getting the music done right now on the second short film, which is called Indent Pursuit. And I asked the people that were helping with music and the composer, I asked them to record some behind the scenes so we have some stuff. Because I think it's kind of fun and cool, the process that goes into that. Because we're really trying to put some care and attention into every aspect of it. Like creating music that sounds like Esotera, like it has its own sound. That the color of the lighting and the color in post, that it has, Esotera has its own look. Like you look at it and you're like, oh yeah, I know what that's from. That because it looks that way and it sounds that way. So we're trying to make it distinctive,
I remember watching a behind the scenes episode they did on Deadliest Catch on Discovery Channel. And it's a great episode. Those cameramen are insane, by the way. The way they climb up on whatever to get shots. It's just nuts. But they talked to the sound guy, and I guess like all the music and underscore of that show is made from sounds that were captured on set. As like
interesting
seagulls, like they're mixing seagull noises into it, and like I was like, what? You wouldn't know it if you listened to it.
Yeah. But I bet you would sound kind of hollow without all that extra attention to detail.
Yeah. But you can listen to it and you go, oh yeah, that's definitely Deadliest Catch. That's that sound, because it could only come from that. So yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for your time, Marcus. I appreciate it. It's good talking with you.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. Let's stay in touch, man. Anytime you want me back,